There was a period when you were at your kind of worst, there was quite a lot of stress in the home environment.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Things kind of seemed to get worse in my relationship with my dad.
How bad were things? Like, what were some of the events and incidents that happened?
It was a lot of aggression, so things like punching walls, throwing the tables up.
Your nervous system has a kind of relationship to that of this may not be safe, and you kind of have to ramp up and you have to predict and you have to respond to. And that, of course, gets very tiring. Welcome to this week's episode of In Therapy with me, Alex Howard. And for today's episode, we're going to be seeing the second half of Hannah's first session. So last week we got to know a little bit about Hannah's background. We heard from her mum. We really were exploring this theme of recovery in a toxic environment. In today's episode, you're going to see the second half of this session where we started to get into some of more of the practical pieces for things to hopefully continue to progress for Hannah. We start to explore her relationship with her emotions, and we come into this a little bit experientially as well. I also set her a piece of homework, which I've already used actually in a previous episode with another participant. This is something I do a lot with people that I work with. You can follow this along at home. So here's Hannah, and here's continuing with her first session. Talk to me a bit about, you said in your email to me, and it kind of makes sense in the kind of context what we're talking about, but you said that you feel that the helper and the achiever and the anxiety pattern are definitely part of it. And it sounds like, particularly as you're coming more out into the world and you're being around other people. Yeah. So just say a bit about how that kind of plays out. You know, so let's say you go out on a second or third date with someone, or you're out with friends, but there's other people there that you don't know, or you're in a kind of environment that's not a familiar environment. Right. What would be some of the stuff that would come up, some of the things, the thoughts, some of the feelings, some of the stuff that you would experience?
I think lately, the main bodily symptom has been sweating, excessive sweating, and that kind of creates an anxiety cycle on its own. Yeah. That can happen regardless of whether I actually feel concerned in my mind.
Yes.
It seems to just be, it also does happen when I'm just on my own at home, chilling out. I don't know if that's related, but it also happens when I am anxious as well.
Yeah. So there's a pre-verbal stress response, if that makes sense. So it's not, we'll talk about the cognitive element in a minute, but sometimes you may not even be having thoughts of anxiety or stress or whatever, but your nervous system is reacting.
Yeah, that's definitely it.
Yeah.
And I think helper I feel like that's almost out of the way. It's just something I need to really just keep checking in on and just keep thinking what do I need right now? What do I want to do right now? Kind of thing. But anxiety does feel quite prominent still. So going back to what you were saying about stuff at home, and what you were saying makes sense in terms of I still feel very alert quite a lot of the time when I don't need to be.
Yeah.
And that can just, I feel just a bit jumpy, easily stressed out.
Yeah. So there's almost there's a place inside of you that feels kind of unsafe, or feels afraid, or feels kind of scared coming out into the world. Does that make sense? There's one way of putting this is we all have kind of pop psychology would call it an inner child. I think it's a bit more nuanced than that, but a younger place inside of us, which is can be our access to our kind of joy and our play and our spontaneity, but it's also the place in us that can be unsure and feel the world's a bit scary and a bit overwhelming. And particularly if that part of us has had kind of difficult experiences with people in the world, it can kind of brace a little bit if you imagine having a kind of 3-year-old, in fact, our youngest just turned 3 and has just started going to nursery a few times a week. And it's when you kind of drop her off, it's she kind of wants to kind of cling to kind of my wife or I, and there's a sense of this child that's normally tearing up the house is suddenly this kind of slightly meek, We all have that place inside of us where when we feel, and we may do all kinds of ways to bury that part of us in a basement and pretend it doesn't exist and pretend it's not there, but everyone has that in different ways.
Yeah.
And if we've had experiences of people, particularly when we're younger, our parents or our primary caregivers or the kind of people that take care of us, they are our reference point for the world. Like, we learn what the world is like by our relationship to our parents. And when we have a parent who is unpredictable and at times scary and frightening in their behavior, then we learn that that's sort of how the world is. And then this kind of younger place inside of us comes out into the world and is kind of not really quite sure how to respond and needs to kind of try to merge to feel safe or to kind of hold back. Or so it makes sense why. And if we then think about a period of a few years when you're most vulnerable in your entire life, and that was what you were exposed to the whole time, it makes sense that place in you feels afraid and feels scared and feels kind of overwhelmed by the world that's out there. As I kind of talk about that and kind of gives a bit of context, does that resonate? Does that feel true for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, it makes sense now that, because sometimes I felt I was like, it was normal to be anxious in the situations at home. Other times I felt like I needn't have been so anxious, if you see what I mean. So it felt like from like an objective point of view, there were definitely times where it's totally normal to be like scared, but other times when I needn't have been. And I think it makes sense with what you're saying. Like, I had less resources to deal with it, so it was like felt more intense. It affected me in a big way, and I feel like I've kind of got to like maybe like get over that, like get my body to understand that. It feels like my body still thinks like it's not got over it.
Yeah, it makes sense. If you think about that place in you, like that part of you that feels that way, do you feel any of it now, like in this context?
How do you mean? Do you mean that?
So that kind of place that feels like it's slightly kind of braced, it's slightly kind of on edge, slightly like not quite sure if it's able to relax.
Kind of, yeah. A lot of the time though, no. It's really confusing. Like, I think some of it was related to how the thoughts I was having. So because all that stuff made me see myself in a certain way and I felt quite really down on myself, I think then that was causing me more, low self-worth and low self-esteem was just making doing anything like out in the world more anxiety inducing. I expected like rejection all the time. I expected criticism constantly. And so I have that a lot less now. And so that helps. Yes,
I'm sure. And it sounds like that you've worked through quite a lot of the kind of cognitive side of that, like in your mind, like you're more rational, you're less likely to get caught in a kind of thought pattern that goes that way. And it sounds like on an emotional level, you've also come quite a long way in calming your system. And there's still this kind of almost pre-conscious, pre-verbal response in your body.
Yeah.
Where in your body, like if you feel a little bit of it now or you reflect on other times that you experienced it, what's the felt sense of that?
So like right now, as we're talking about it, if I talk about this kind of thing, my body feels like shaky. So I feel really shaky right now.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the main thing.
Yeah. So you feel shaky. Is that in your whole body? Is that a particular location in your body?
I guess like tense and like shaky in my arms and just a little anxiety around here.
Yeah. Okay, good. It's good that you can notice that. How do you feel towards that feeling of feeling shaky? So there's the kind of shaky, there's the kind of buzziness kind of sort of thing that's in there. How do you respond when you feel that?
I guess it makes me feel uncomfortable. So I almost feel a bit more of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the feeling of the shakiness, and then there's the feeling in response to the shakiness, which is that, I don't like this, I shouldn't be feeling this, this feels scary, or what? If you would put some words to that, what would the words be?
It's probably like some shoulds, like, should be more relaxed, or try and be more relaxed.
Yeah.
This isn't good for my healing state.
Yeah. So you can sort of go into what's the consequence of feeling this way. So if we were to put this in the context of this being like a young girl, like like something from like kind of 2 to 5 year old kind of young girl that is being taken to school for the first time, or is being taken to meet people that she doesn't know, and she's feeling a bit shy and a bit kind of like not sure. How would you respond to a child that was feeling that way?
Comfort, like reassurance.
Yeah. So she'd be allowed to feel that way.
Yeah,
like the
totally.
feelings would be okay rather than judged or try to fix it or trying to kind of get rid of it. Yeah. So would it be possible right now to just let the feelings be there? So rather than try to change them, to try and kind of put them in a box, to just see what happens, to just for a few minutes just to explore that right now it's okay to feel a bit shaky.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel a bit like to let yourself have those feelings.
Yeah.
What happens if you do that?
I feel like emotional. Yeah.
So whereabouts do you feel that?
I feel like, over my head, on my chest.
Does it feel okay to feel emotional?
I know it does, but it's a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I'm getting better at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just see, and I'm not trying to force anything, so you can say stop at any point you want to say stop. But I'm just curious what happens if you just let the emotion just be there.
Yeah,
Nothing has to happen, but it's just and it might be all that feels comfortable right now is just to go, yes, I acknowledge it, but to just see if it's possible for that emotion to be allowed.
Okay. Yeah. I have to fight not to push it down.
Yeah.
Just in the presence of someone we've just met. Just in this kind of scenario.
This was like our first meeting, and I'm asking you to show me your feelings.
Yeah.
So
I felt like the same when I worked with EFT practitioner. It was really uncomfortable for a long time, but now I feel like more accepting of it.
Yeah.
But it's just a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah. So I really hear your this is my comfort edge right now. I'm not gonna push you, but I think the kind of takeaway from what we're kind of exploring is that sort of what you've learned to do is when feelings come up to either go into I think what you were doing before is you were going into your mind and you would go into a kind of anxiety pattern around it. And I think you're doing less of that now. I think what's happening is you've kind of learned to be a bit more kind of with what's happening. But there's a sort of sense of, I shouldn't be feeling this, or what might other people think, or and it might not be safe to feel this in this sort of context. So what then happens is the kind of scared little girl inside of you that's feeling these feelings doesn't get the kind of reassurance and the comfort that she needs, so she actually gets a bit more scared, and she gets a bit more, well, maybe I'm not safe because I'm being told that I can't feel this. So what I'd like you to do some work with this is firstly a piece of homework which I call situation, feeling and response. Okay. And I'm going to I'll send you a link to a video and some kind of handout around it. But what I want you to start to do is to notice different situations that you're in. So that's the situation. So an example might be situation was went out on a date with the person you're dating. And then feeling, what was the feeling? Feeling was felt really nervous and unsure and was kind of worried about how it would go and what would happen. And then response might be something like told myself that I needed to kind of get over it and stop worrying about it, and or response might be distracted myself by thinking about what was happening. So what I want to start to build awareness of is different situations, what you feel and how you respond to how you feel. Okay. Because part of what you will have learnt is different coping strategies for getting rid of feelings, not feeling feelings, because the environment that you were in was not particularly holding and supportive of feelings and emotions. That awareness then allows us to start to do some work around changing the way that you respond to and you relate to that part of yourself, which then allows your system to learn to be much calmer and to feel more safe in more environments more quickly and more easily. And it's not that I think that it's like some kind of miracle panacea, like we do that and it's like, oh my God, like miracle recovery. It's like Anna walks in next time, it's like, oh my God, Alex, I climbed Mount Everest. But if we look at the overall kind of picture in terms of your of where you're at, there's a lot of really good pieces that are in place. But the next, what it feels to me like is the next piece is your system learning to feel safe in more places, and that really comes down to your relationship with your feelings and emotions. So when you feel something, how do you respond to, and how do you hold that?
Okay. So you think this is quite a big piece of moving forward, like addressing this?
I'd say in terms of your psycho-emotional development, I'd say it's a pretty important piece. It's probably a very important piece. And I'd say in your health journey, it's the next piece, and it is an important piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
It feels good to just know that, because I felt like I had an idea, but I didn't know what the next piece was, and this is what I wanted to know.
And it feels right to me, but does it resonate for you? Is it being the next piece?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Totally.
Any other questions or anything else that you want to share at this point?
Yeah. So I think I did mention it, but in the email, I'm feeling quite positive generally, like more than I have done in a really long time. Yeah. And I probably will feel quite good going home now, like, you know, having done this and having like ideas in place. But that on its own, I feel, is hard to manage. Like,
yeah, because your body doesn't distinguish between stress and positivity. Both irritate, both inflame your system. In a sense. One feels emotionally better, like feeling excited and positive is a nice feeling. Feeling stressed and anxious is an unpleasant feeling, but both can be stimulating to your system.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. So that actually was in my notes. I didn't comment on it. We can do some particular work on that. What I would say as the practice point here is see what you can do to bring your meditation kind of practice more into daily life. So let's say, for example, that you're going back on the train today or tomorrow?
Today,
yeah. So let's say you're riding back on the train this afternoon, and it's like your mind starts to speed up and you're kind of feeling energy in your body. As much as you can on a train, do some meditation. Like work on your breathing, work on coming back into your arms and legs. Part of what's happening is that you've been in such a challenging situation for so long that as soon as you start to feel better, it's such a relief. It's a little bit like having a kid that's been banned off sweets for a year, and then you leave them in a sweet shop. Yeah. And it's like, finally I can have some. So it's not an unreasonable response that your system is like, oh, I feel good feelings and I want to have more of that. And the more that you can ground that in your body, the better. Your yoga practice will be helping you do that. Meditation helps doing that. But also the homework that I've set you around situation, feeling, response, you can do that on positive feelings as well. Okay. So it might be situation, might be taking the train home, feeling is being kind of feeling more positive about the future, and response is mind is racing, body's adrenalized. So you can also build more awareness around how you respond to positive things as well. Okay.
And like in terms of like my mind just running away with me, like I feel like I really lose perspective. Like I feel so positive, like it gets unrealistic. I feel like, oh, maybe I can do this, or maybe by then I'll be, you know. Yeah. And I don't want to feel that because it's so, obviously felt that way before, and it's so like hard on the other side when I just want to feel like, I want to gain perspective. I want to I
hear that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a partly a reactive response. That's like one of the ways. So the more low we get, the more we pop high, and the more we pop high, the more we pop low. Okay. So not that in any way am I inferring because you don't have bipolar, but just take a point to sometimes you take the point to the extreme and it's easier to make the point. In bipolar, where people's or manic depression people's moods go super high and go super low, people often think that the resolution is to work on the low mood, and that is important. But often, not that I'm an expert in it, but when I work with people in that situation, I'm often really looking at when the mood goes high. Because if you can stop it going too high, you stop it crashing back down on the low. So again, self-awareness about that is good. We will also come into, today's been more of a kind of getting to know each other, figuring out what's going on, putting some kind of context around things. But we will start to get in some more specific techniques and tools that you can start to work with as well.
Okay.
Yeah?
Sounds good.
Any other questions that you've got?
Right now, I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I thought it went really well. I came out feeling really positive. It was enlightening. I was kind of surprised how emotional I felt when Alex was talking about connecting to your like inner child. And also, I wasn't expecting my body to shake when I was talking about my dad. But it's something that's happened before. It happened for ages, you know, whenever I talked about it. I just feel shaky. But for some reason I thought that that was dealt with. I thought that had gone now. So I guess that's a little clue that there's maybe some stuff to work on still there, which is good to know. And I think I paced London pretty well, but it's just to do with how my body was when I got home, like how wide and stressed it was. I'm still getting used to it. It's quite new because I'm not used to feeling it in this way. Yeah, I did a meditation on the train and my whole body my muscles felt really relaxed, and my eyes, I felt really sleepy, but in my like chest and stomach there was just like this whirring constantly going around. So I think that's what I'm going to be focusing on for a while.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Please do share your experience. I really appreciate reading your comments, your questions. I do read all the comments and respond to many of the comments. You liking the video, commenting, subscribing to the channel, clicking the notification bell, all those things really help us. Oliver and I are super passionate about these episodes being seen by more people. I think it's something really original and very brave on the part of the participants that we're trying to do here. So by you engaging with the content, that tells YouTube this is content worth sharing. But also would really love to hear your thoughts and your reflections. Tomorrow there won't be an episode of Everyday Alex. I've got a rammed schedule and I just couldn't find a window that's going to work, but it will be back on Thursday. And in next week's episode of In Therapy, we're going to cycle back to Lauren. We followed Lauren for the first 3 episodes of In Therapy, and we're going to cycle back and see how she's been getting on. And you're going to see part of my second session with her, which we filmed via Zoom video, was an online session. So look forward to talking with you on Everyday Alex on Thursday, and also we'll be back next week with Lauren. Thanks for watching.
All this work that I've done in the last decade to get to this place that I thought I had to be, I'm almost back at square one again.
You've invested an enormous amount of effort and energy and suffering ultimately in trying to heal your inner hurt by all this stuff that you think you need to be. And it's actually, the more you do that, the more traumatizing it becomes.
I lost sight of what the real goals were, massively.
What you do have is enough pain associated with going down that path to realize you don't want to spend the rest of your life doing it.
I really don't.
If you hadn't got sick, I wonder what would have happened.
According to my doctor, I would have had a heart attack.